We are basically halfway through the 2025 fantasy season, and I thought it would be a good time to take a look back at 2025 rookie drafts and redo them, given all the information that we know about the class 7 weeks into their rookie years. And I will say, for some of these players who have yet to really show us much so far, I will probably still lean on their prospect profiles and hope from draft season because they still have only played just 7 games in their careers. That is not enough time to say anyone who hasn't produced yet is a bust. For reference, through 7 weeks as rookies, Derrick Henry was a backup. He was the fantasy RB62 in 2016. Joe Mixon was the RB36. DK Metcalf was a wide receiver 39. AJ Brown, wide receiver 47. Drake London, wide receiver 36. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 38. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 69. Rashee Rice, wide receiver 39. Like, sometimes it just takes time for rookies to get going on their team and in the NFL. And we always say the second half of rookie years are the breakout weeks, especially post-bye week for all of these players. So I'll do another rookie redraft at the end of the year, but it's also fun to do one now with so many rookies actually playing well and rankings being changed positively and negatively for a decent number of these guys. So let's get started. The 101 is not an easy decision right now. I mean, the first 2 picks are pretty easy, but deciding between Emeka Egbuka and Ashton Jeanty for who the 101 actually is not easy. I will give Emeka Egbuka the nod here for 1.01 and Ashton Jeanty to put at 1.02, mostly because of my core value of elite wide receiver over elite running back in Dynasty. But man, it is very close. You cannot feel bad for having drafted Jeanty 101 in May, but you also have to be ecstatic about drafting Egbuka in the late first because he has earned a 1.01 rookie value for sure. These guys are both in tier 1 of 2025 rookie rankings right now. Now, the next tier of rookie spans from my 1.03 to my 1.07 with 5 players total, starting with Omarion Hampton at 1.03, which I feel like is consensus because he was on fire after Najee Harris went down and was living up to his 1.02 rookie draft ADP until his injury 2 weeks ago that unfortunately now sounds like is going to take away most of his rookie season. Still though, Hampton has shown that he's already an elite fantasy producer and elite dynasty running back, so he is the very clear 1.03 for me. In a similar vein comes Tetairoa McMillan as the 1.04 and rookie wide receiver 2 because he's also been very good as the immediate alpha wide receiver 1 for Carolina that we expected him to be, and he finally found the end zone last week twice against the Cowboys. His future looks incredibly bright, and if the Panthers can ever become a better offense, he has legitimate top 5 fantasy upside. Then at 1.05, I'm going to do it. I'm putting in Jaxson Dart after just 4 games. I very much believed in Dart as the clear quarterback 2 in this class behind only Cam Ward, and even that looks like I undersold Jaxson Dart, maybe even oversold Cam Ward a little bit. He has played very well and of course had the signature win against the Eagles that I think has put this new Giants team on the map and almost beat the Denver Broncos had their kicker actually made some extra points. They could have had 2 pretty magnificent wins against playoff teams this year. And maybe I am drinking the Kool-Aid too hard after those games, but man, does Jaxson Dart look good as a passer. He is a high volume rusher, which we love for fantasy as well. And he's doing all of this without Malik Nabers. Imagine what he can do when Nabers gets back, and also the possibility of them drafting or signing another wide receiver in the offseason and continuing to build around their now young franchise quarterback. Honestly, I think Jaxson Dart is a top 10 dynasty quarterback right now, and in Superflex leagues, that upside and value is just far greater than anyone that we haven't mentioned yet. At 1.06 then is Tyler Warren. I mean, what an idiot I am for ranking Colston Loveland over him in rookie rankings because Tyler Warren is an absolute monster, dude. He is the current fantasy tight end 1 through 7 weeks, pacing to continue the trend of rookie tight ends finishing number 1 for 3 years in a row. He is on pace for 80 receptions, 1,070 yards, and 7 touchdowns on 110 targets. That is incredible production for a tight end, let alone a rookie tight end. I do kind of expect some people to have some sophomore slump fears for Tyler Warren after we watched Sam Laporta's 2024 season, and now Brock Bowers has also been hurt and underwhelming this year. But if Brock Bowers was healthy, I fully expect him to be the Brock Bowers. He's just dealing with a nagging injury that has really killed most of his season. And Laporta's slump was also kind of predictable. I mean, he's the 2nd or even 3rd option on the team at best, and the 3rd or even 4th most talented player on the team offensively. His rookie season was also kind of heavily touchdown dependent, and he didn't even break 900 receiving yards. Warren, though, much like Brock Bowers, is not producing on touchdowns right now, but instead producing with receptions and yards as a 1,000 plus receiver because they are the best receiver on their own teams. Tyler Warren is absolutely amazing. And if you want to argue that he should be the 107 behind the next guy or the 1.04 ahead of a couple people, I don't really mind that. Having an elite tight end like him on your Dynasty team is going to make a massive difference than figuring it out with lesser guys. So just depending on how you value tight ends or the type of league that you play in with tight end premium leagues could determine the ultimate value for Tyler Warren here in rookie drafts. So at 1.07 then is Quinshon Judkins, who rounds out this second tier of rookies. His whole story has been a massive up and down roller coaster of Dynasty value, but it does really feel like the off the field stuff seems to be behind him, and he is producing like the top rookie running back that we all thought he could be, especially as the only other back besides Ashton Jeanty who had a clear-cut pathway to being the RB1 on their own team, and he is the RB1 for Cleveland right now and for the future. Through just 6 games played, Judkins is on pace for 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground on 310 carries. That is incredible production. He is also on pace for just 25 receptions and 175 receiving yards, which are not good numbers. So that is really the one thing that is holding Judkins back right now, is we saw 2 games with 3+ receptions, but then we've seen 4 games with either 1 or 0 receptions. So the lack of receiving work is really kind of hindering Quinshon Judkins right now. But we also got to remember that his 6-game sample size so far includes 2 games played below 40% of snaps, and he's only played over 60% of snaps once. It was actually just this past week in his 3-touchdown game against the Dolphins. So the more Judkins gets integrated into this offense and gives Stefanski the trust to play him as a more every down back, that is the true upside for Quinshon Judkins in year 2, 3, 4, and on. Not to mention, if the Browns can be any better of a team offensively at any point in his career, that would be great for Quinshon Judkins too. So a very easy tier 2 player who has definitely gained dynasty value, even if numerically his rookie draft value hasn't changed all that much from his ADP back in May. Now, as we move into my tier 3 of rookies that will take us through the 110, we start at the 1.08 with Cam Skattebo, who has been tremendous since Tyrone Tracy's injury, and even before Tracy got hurt and they were splitting the backfield, Cam Skattebo still looked really good. And then in Tracy's first week back, Skattebo dominated the backfield with 21 touches for 110 yards and 3 touchdowns in that Thursday night game against the Eagles, and then looked great last week against the Broncos. I think we're witnessing this year's Bucky Irving, the day 3 running back who should not have fallen to day 3 and breaks the mold of day 3 guys having shorter shelf lives and being more fragile assets for Dynasty. Cam Skattebo is very, very good, and this offense, as it continues to improve under Jaxson Dart, and then they get Malik Neighbors back, he might only just get better. If you told me that Cam Skattebo was the one player in this tier 3 that jumps up to tier 2 by the end of the season, I would not be shocked at all. Now I'm going to group the next 2 guys together because there's not really too much to say right now because they haven't done all that much throughout the main course of the season, but the pedigree is still absolutely there for both of these guys. It's actually the top 2 picks in the NFL draft, with the 1.09 being Travis Hunter and the 110 being Cam Ward. Now I think both of these guys are kind of being dragged down hard by their situations. Ward, as we all know, is not getting any help from his wide receivers, his coaches, his offensive system, nothing to this point that his coach was the first person to get the axe in 2025. My fear, though, is the length of time it takes for Tennessee to become competitive again. They have so many needs and so many holes to fill that they just cannot address all of them in the next year or two. And if Ward just continues being a mediocre top 25 quarterback with minimal upside, then he's Bryce Young 2.0, and I think that is hard to value as a first-round pick. I think he's talented, and if he gets some help at wide receiver and a better offensive system, he can be really good, but it just seems like it's going to be a very long road ahead of him to actually get to that point. The reason I have Travis Hunter ahead of Ward is because the Jaguars team right now is pretty solid. Trevor Lawrence should be good enough, and Liam Cohen should definitely be good enough, and we know Travis Hunter is more than good enough as a player to be a top 20 fantasy wide receiver. I mean, we just saw it on Sunday against the Rams. He had a massive game. So if you can continue building upon his offensive production and utilization, which may be sparked by a Brian Thomas Jr. injury right now, we could see that typical second half rookie wide receiver surge, especially as the Jaguars enter their bye week this week. Now we get to the 111 and the start of my tier 4 of rookies, and we still have TreVeyon Henderson right here, but he is becoming increasingly more difficult to defend with each passing week. My belief in the second half breakout is really starting to dwindle because I just don't know if Mike Vrabel wants to use him as more than a kind of complementary running back. He's only played 2 games over 40% of snaps, and now he's lost usage to some guy named Terrell Jennings, who is an undrafted free agent in 2024 out of Florida A&M. The usage is just so dumb to me, but it is clearly the biggest disconnect between what the NFL believes and what the fantasy and dynasty football community believes, because Henderson can be a really good running back, but New England just refuses to use him. I will say, those of you who follow me on X might have seen my Henderson tweet from earlier this week showing that we have seen other top 50 drafted running backs struggle to be used early as rookies, including guys like Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Mark Ingram, Steven Jackson, and even Christian McCaffrey kind of to a degree. So we at least have a historical precedence for this and hope for the future, as all of those guys had way better second halves in their rookie years for fantasy football than they did in their first half. So if we can just get TreVeyon Henderson to average 10 plus PPR points per game moving forward, I would consider that a win as we head into 2026. Then to round out the first round of this mock draft at the 112, we have RJ Harvey, who really isn't all that much different from TreVeyon Henderson, because outside of their blowout win against the Bengals, where he got a lot of garbage time work, RJ Harvey is on pace for just 100 touches this year. And I think everyone got a little too excited about him landing in Denver in the second round that we didn't consider Sean Payton's history with rookies and J.K. Dobbins being a better than average running back who still has some life left in him. That is not to disparage RJ Harvey's long-term outlook. It is still there as the potential future RB1 for Sean Payton and the Broncos, but there were initial hurdles that he had to clear that we just didn't see or we didn't actually believe were there. So Harvey has lost some value, but I still think is a very talented rookie who will get his time to shine because he hasn't looked bad at all on his limited touches. He's just not getting the touches right now. Next up then at the 2.01, we have Colston Loveland, who has struggled so far to start his career, but he was battling through some injuries and then getting reintegrated into the Bears offense. But we are starting to see the ramp up as he has played 42% of snaps in week 6 in his first game back from injury, and then a career high 66% of snaps in week 7. Now, sure, Cole Kmet did get hurt, which probably impacted Loveland's usage last week, but an injury is also what freed up Cam Skattebo to start to dominate, and he hasn't let go of the reins. So I don't see why the same thing couldn't happen here as well. Loveland was my rookie tight end 1 in this class because of his combination of age, athleticism, route running, and receiving skills, and the blocking ability as a very complete tight end. And let's not forget that Chicago also drafted Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren as a top 10 pick in the first round. They knew what they wanted and who they were drafting with their first round pick, and I still expect a top 5 fantasy ceiling for Colston Loveland. I honestly would not be surprised if we're talking about Loveland as the tight end 3 or tight end 4 by the end of the season for Dynasty, right there with guys with Browers, McBride, and Tyler Warren as the top Dynasty tight ends that you need if you are to be competitive. And just while we're at it, talking about Chicago Bears, 2.02 is actually Luther Burden. And this is partially a course correction on my post-draft evaluation of Burden and trying to stay consistent with my talent over situation belief, especially when it comes to rookies. I was adamant about Emeka Egbuka all draft season that you should draft him despite what looks like a bad situation. But I did not continue that for Luther Burden, despite my marker system telling me I should be by ranking Luther Burden as the wide receiver 3 in this class ahead of Emeka Egbuka. But this is also due to what I saw on that Monday night game last week, as Burden went 4 for 51 on 4 targets, which was a career high in targets and yards, despite not playing any different of a snap percentage than he had before the bye week. So now that we're past the bye week for Chicago and heading into the second half of the season, I do expect Luther Burden to start seeing more snaps, running more routes, and actually becoming a consistent piece of this Bears offense that he was drafted to be, and then long-term can be that wide receiver 2 behind Rome Odunze in a Ben Johnson offense. I mean, that upside could exist this year. They could trade DJ Moore by the trade deadline, or at the very least trade him in the offseason to move off of his contract, and then Luther Burden gets freed up by DJ Moore not being there, surpasses Olamide Zaccheaus in the slot, and bang, bada boom, he's running as the wide receiver 2 this season by the end of the year, and has a lot of upside as we head into 2026. So for all those reasons, that is why Luther Burden, while he hasn't really done all that much, has ascended in my personal rookie rankings up to this 2.02 value. Now, next up at 2.03, you know what? Let's just chug this Kool-Aid until the bottle is absolutely empty. My 2.03 is Chargers tight end Oronde Gadsden. Through 5 games played, Gadsden is on a 17-game pace of 95 targets, 75 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. He has seen 7 or more targets and 5 or more receptions in 3 out of 5 games. He's eclipsed 45 receiving yards in 3 out of 5 games and 65 or more yards in each of his last 2. His snap counts have climbed every week from 25% to 47 to 53 to 75 to 78% last week. And if you just use your eyeballs, this kid is legit. I mean, he just had a monster game against the Colts with 7 for 164 and 1. He is a weapon. He is athletic. He has the skill set of a converted wide receiver. He is Justin Herbert's new starting tight end, and the future is just extremely bright for Oronde Gadsden, especially if the target share increases with Keenan Allen gone at some point over the next year or two. My marker system gets a massive W for this call, and Gadsden could be a potential top 5 Dynasty tight end as we head into 2026. And why not just keep the tight end train rolling? Because at the 2.04, we have Harold Fannin, an immediate and fantastic contributor to the Cleveland Browns, even alongside David Njoku. He is on pace for 100 targets, 77 receptions, 700 yards, and 2 to 3 touchdowns as a very PPR-type tight end that has already established himself as a top target for the Browns and a big part of their offense. And then you add in that David Njoku is a free agent at the end of the year, so Fannin could have the main tight end 1 role all to himself next year. That is juicy for his upside, that if he can average more than 9 yards per reception, and if Cleveland gets any better, that he gets more touchdown opportunities, that is another very easy path here for top 5 Dynasty value at the position for Harold Fannin. And then at 2.05, to finish off tier 4, we have Matthew Golden, who is really only here because he's actually a part of his offense right now, even though he really isn't doing anything with it, which honestly could be more damning to his profile than an actual positive, because I personally feel like I was right about Matthew Golden so far through 7 games. He is just not a difference maker at the NFL level. He was not able to distance himself from other mediocre talents in college, and that has led him to not being able to distance himself from other mediocre talents in the NFL. Through 7 games, he is on pace for 50 receptions and 700 yards on 65 targets, and he has yet to score a touchdown. He's probably the most relevant rookie that we've talked about so far, and as I said, the only reason that he's here at the 2.05 in tier 4 is because he at least has had and will continue to have an opportunity for the rest of the year on this offense. But there is also a world where when Jaden Reed and Christian Watson get back and Matthew Golden just potentially gets more lost in this receiver room than he already is, competing with just Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks. So it's not to say that he isn't a good player. He's just not a great player and just not a difference maker. So I don't really care all that much about Matthew Golden. So it's why he's at the bottom of this tier at the 2.05. Now, to just quickly run through my tier 5 of rookies, we have Mason Taylor, Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris, and Kaleb Johnson. Now, this tier is essentially the wait and see tier because outside of a couple weeks of Mason Taylor, we really haven't seen anything from anyone. And that is probably not that great of a thing for most of these guys, especially Jaden Higgins, who is out there running routes and has had the opportunity to do something, and he just hasn't. Trey Harris is the wide receiver 4 right now, behind Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, and probably also behind Oronde Gadsden for targets when he does get on the field. Kaleb has been a total bust so far that I don't want to fully give up on yet, but it's really not looking all that great for him. Mason Taylor, we have seen the good and the bad. A lot of the bad, in fact, mostly just because of how bad the Jets are offensively, and they have a ways to go to improve. So that's why he's at the top of this tier, because we've actually seen it from him, but not much higher up in tier 4. There's really just not that much you can do here with any of these guys other than just waiting and seeing. Tier 6 then is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Bashal Tutin, Woody Marks, Alec Iomanner, Brashard Smith, and Dylan Gabriel. This feels mostly like a kind of discount wait and see tier because all of these guys have kind of flashed early, but they're still being held back by their offense or role on the team that's preventing them from being more than just interesting depth guys that could maybe turn into something. I think the biggest discussion for some people here is, why do I have Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt this far down when he is an actual starter starter. And that is just because I don't think that he's that great, and I don't think that he has any longevity as a starting running back. Washington needs help at the running back position. And even though Jacory Krosky-Merritt has flashed, I think he has shown more that he is not a long-term guy. He is not Chris Carson. He is not James Robinson. He is not even Jordan Howard. But instead, he is Jeremy Langford. He is Peyton Barber, who actually, fun fact, is cousins with Jeremy Langford. He's more of a Chris Ivory type of running back. The running backs like that who are fine NFL players, but aren't really worth much for fantasy in Dynasty. So if he's not producing all that well for you right now as a starter, and then he's probably going to get replaced in April, then why should we value him any higher than where he is right now? That's kind of why I've got them down here in this range with other kind of slightly better than just handcuff running backs with Bashaw Tutin, with Woody Marks. Can he ascend above this range? Absolutely. But from anything and everything that I've seen so far from Jacory Krosky-Merritt, there's just no reason for me to value him any higher. Tier 7 then basically rounds out my top 30 rookies right now with Kyle Williams, Ollie Gordon, DJ Giddens, and Dylan Sampson. 3 handcuff running backs and 1 wide receiver who is making me very, very sad right now. But I'm not giving up on Kyle Williams. I'm far too invested in him from rookie drafts to give up after 7 weeks, especially when the New England Patriots could still really use a good wide receiver because Stephon Diggs, Kayshon Boutte, it's not like they've been crushing it all year. They've each had moments. They've each had a couple of weeks, but it's not like they've been tremendously amazing wide receivers in the NFL right now. And if we think that Mike Vrabel is to blame for Henderson's lack of usage, then we could also apply the same thought process to Kyle Williams. Maybe Vrabel really does just hate rookies, and if that's the case, then Kyle Williams still has the same upside as he had back in May, even if he has lost a little bit of dynasty value just because he hasn't done anything as of right now. Please, Mike Vrabel, get these rookies involved. They are talented. You drafted him for a reason. Please get them involved. So that's going to wrap up what is effectively a combination of a 2025 rookie draft redo and my current top 30 rookie rankings for Dynasty Fantasy Football after 7 weeks of their NFL careers. I will do this again after the season when we hopefully get some second half surges from some of these guys and rankings shift around from now until then. I'm also working on a 2026 preview for my marker system to really start to understand how this class is shaping up and how that impacts trades that you might be making before your trade deadlines and before the playoffs start to either be buying or selling 2026 picks. So stay tuned for that over the next couple of weeks. Otherwise, guys, hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you everyone in the next video. Peace.